Hello aspirants and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy, and here we continue with our mains 2025 series in which we will be covering the mains specific topic, specifically of course for the upcoming mains 2025 examination. Now in today I bring to you the Indian society topic of women in India. In this we'll be looking at their issues, the issues that women face, the role that women play, and women related organizations and the work that they do. So let's get started with this main topic of Indian society. Now first things first, we will first try to trace the subtopic over here. We'll understand from what part is it coming. Of course, Indian society, it's part of GS1, so it's part of GS1, not GS3, GS1, which talks about Indian heritage, culture, history, geography of the world, and society. So basically it is coming out from this particular term, society. Now under this is the heading for the GS1 paper. Under it there are 10 different bullet points. It comes from one of the bullet points which talks about role of women and women's organization, population and associated issues, poverty and developmental issues, urbanization, their problems and their remedies. So this is the entire part in which we are interested in role of women and women's organization. So of course we will not limit it to just the role and the organization, but we will also be talking about the issues that the women are facing, and much more in detail we will analyze, so that any kind of questions in mains examination can be solved with the help of the knowledge which you will be gathering in the class. In addition to this, of course, as we always do in our main series, we will be also looking at the previous year questions which has come in mains from this particular topic. So let's get started. First things first, the issues of women. Now the issues of women, we could take it generally as well, but I have deliberately classified here in urban area, issues of women in urban area, as well as issues of women in the rural area. However, there will be certain issues which might overlap as well, and I will be explaining that to you also. But here majorly those issues are faced by urban area women, that's why they are here. That does not necessarily mean that women in rural areas would not face that issue, and vice versa. Another reason for us to bifurcate is for also you to understand that especially in essays, when you are being asked about certain solutions wherein you have to write about solution, etc., you could always bifurcate. For example, solutions could be bifurcated into long term, short term. In short term, at an individual level, at a societal level, national level, international level. Same is the case with long-term solutions. So when you bifurcate, it becomes more specific. Your answers and essays look more structured. So let us have a look at the issues that women face in urban area. So the first thing here is the food and health of urban poor women. Now the point here would be the women is poor, so anyhow poor people are going to face the problem. So why are we taking specifically women? See, it's very important to note over here is that these are the places, these are poor women is the person who's going to face a concept known as double whammy. These kind of phrases and concepts you should use in your examination. What is double whammy? Double whammy means, see, when a family is poor, that means male is poor, female is poor, both are poor. Whether it's a boy child, girl child, they both are poor. So children will also be born in the poor family. But the thing over here is, since the entire family is poor, that is a whammy, that is a drawback. But for women in that same particular family, it's a double whammy. Why? Because they are poor plus they are women. Now how does that impact? That is because it has been seen, various surveys has been conducted which presents to us data saying that, or suggesting that in a poor family, when the budget is limited, a budget is limited in almost all the family, we don't have as such unlimited, in fact unlimited budget is not there. But the point here is, when you have so less money that you can, for example, send only one of the children to a private school where fees is high, where maybe you may think that education would be better. Not necessarily, even certain government schools have better education, but generally speaking, let's say you want to do higher education, this, that, so you have only so much to enroll only one of your child. So whom do you enroll? Generally, the family chooses the male child to be enrolled and would spend more on the male child, as a result of which being poor of course is a drawback, but being a female in the poor family is a double drawback, which is known as the double whammy. So food and health of urban poor women is a concern. It has been seen that the expenditure on a female child in the poor household is in general also and specifically in poor household is less than the expenditure on the male child, and hence the issue. Next is residence and family life of urban poor women. Now, as far as residence and family life is concerned, see, in urban areas, where do poor people live? Of course, they are spread throughout, but at the same time, they are concentrated in slums. They are concentrated in slums and they are living in slums. That is the way they are living. Now, throughout the day, the males may be going out, earning bread. The females are staying back, taking care of the children, etc. and facing 24/7 issues, 24 hours of issue with respect to the residence where they are living in. At the same time, not just that, in certain areas, the amount of crime, the amount of drug trafficking, that is also high, and women over here face those issues as well. Next is occupation and financial well-being of urban women. Now, even if you remove the poor word from here and just talk about women in themselves, then also they face a lot of issue. First of all, if you talk about occupation, a lot of sectors do not legally be banning women, do not on paper say that we don't hire women, but if you look at the representation of women in these sectors, it will be quite less. So what will happen? The job avenue for the women will be lesser, and this is majorly present in the urban women case. As far as the rural women case is concerned, you will see that there is a huge involvement of women in rural areas when it comes to occupation, is because agricultural opportunities in the field of agriculture is quite high in the rural area. In fact, around 48% of the females are actually basically involved in agriculture over there. So this particular issue can be specifically seen for the urban poor, of course not limited to the urban poor, but more emphatically present for the urban women. Moving ahead, the next issue deals with the political voice of the urban women. Now here, political voice is not there. We are not talking about the representation of women in Lok Sabha as such right now. We are simply talking about the turnout in vote, the awareness with respect to the politics of the country, the involvement in social movements, so on and so forth, which is also quite less. So when you don't have the voice, you cannot make the people or the people in power do things what you would want them to do, or make them do things which favors you, bring bills or acts in your own favor, so on and so forth. Moving ahead, let us now see the issues that they face in the rural areas. So when you talk about rural areas, there are personal issues. Now, what do I mean by personal issue? Does that mean personal issues are not there in urban area? No, it's there. So remember, it's just where the emphasis is more. You can use the same thing in both the criteria, but we have bifurcated based on where it is more prevalent. Now, in personal issue, for example, when a woman is an adult, is taking their own decision, not necessarily, of course, because their decision making itself is restricted, but the thing is, in urban areas, at least the infrastructure, the availability of various things will be there. Here, even that may not be present. For example, if you talk about education in school, now in rural areas, that is very less, or that is sort of non-available, or even if the schools are available, they are at a far distance. Now when they are at a far distance, the family is not allowing the female to go and study over there, so on and so forth. So these kind of issues are faced. Then of course you have the social challenges as well. See, it is sort of understood that when it comes to the rural population is less educated, it is more illiterate, so on and so forth, as a result of which more, or let's say more amount of discrimination happens with respect to the females in rural areas as compared to the males, as compared to the urban areas. However, That is not a generality in every place whatsoever. Of course, in urban areas, at times you can find more discrimination against women. In fact, more discrimination, more harassment as compared to rural areas. That can also be very much possible. But yes, that is there. Then you have the financial challenges. Now, in rural area, no matter how much independence is there for the female child, there is sort of a glass ceiling which is already there because of lack of education, lack of graduation based institute, lack of facilities. As I said, one thing was better in rural areas which is not in urban areas is the opportunity for the job, but at the same time the kinds of jobs you are getting in the rural areas for women, even for men to an extent, but we are focusing on women here, is sort of manual labor job, unskilled, semi-skilled labor kind of a job, which is mechanical, manual in the field for sowing the crops, for harvesting the crops. That is the kind of job you are getting. So there will not be much of an improvement in their lifestyle as such. It will simply be hand to mouth existence. So that is a problem. Then you have marketing challenges, of course, which is again faced by the women. Now, whatever problem is there in rural area for everyone, it is going to be there for women also, but being a woman, they would face more problem. Marketing challenge. Now, what is that? When there is a female farmer, now the female farmer needs to also find the market to sell their crops. Now the market itself is distorted, cartelization, etc. exists, and farmer finds it very difficult to sell the produce. So the farmer has to sell it off in the neighboring villages, in the neighboring states, and have to travel abroad to sell their produce. Now imagine, instead of a male farmer, there is a female farmer, which will make it even more difficult for her to sell her produce. Right? So in the family, she might not be allowed. Then you will say, then why is there not a male member going and selling? Because you need to understand the structure of the family. Maybe the male in the society, in the family, is an old age person who cannot do that physically. Then the question is, then why, if the person cannot do it physically, why they are stopping the female to go abroad or outside the village, city or state? That is because still patriarchy rules. Even though they may not be able to do the things on their own, but still the patriarchal system is so normalized. Even then, even though they might be lying on the bed, still what they would want or desire would be done by the females of the family, as a result of which, again, a challenge. Managerial challenge. The women have to manage a lot of things. Now, why managerial challenge more over here? We of course know that the women manages her professional life as well as personal life, both of the things here. In rural area, what happens is, even for the basic needs, a lot of effort needs to be made. For example, cooking fuel. For cooking fuel, you have to go out, you have to go a long distance, get the firewoods and then burn and then make food. It's at the same time going for long distance to just fetch water. Now, of course, with increase in water scarcity in the entire nation and the world, this water fetching and all those things may get difficult even in urban areas, and it is there difficult right now also. But as I said, it's more prevalent in the rural areas. Then, of course, competition challenges are there. Competition as in, at times, as we mentioned, that rural women would be getting certain jobs in the rural sector, in the agriculture sector, but at times in the season where there is, because in agriculture you find seasonal unemployment. So in certain seasons when the job is less, the women will be the first one to be kicked out of the system. Again, a discrimination against the women that happens. Right? Moving ahead, lack of mobility challenges. What is mobility? Mobility is basically the movement of a person up and down the ladder of the society. So in society, people are at different levels. Someone is at the top, someone is at the bottom, someone is at the middle. Now, this is the, let's talk about with respect to the class. How much money you earn, how educated, what is the status of yours. If you are at the bottom and you want to reach above, there are ways to reach it, there are tools to reach it, there are processes to reach it. What are the agents to ensure that you move up the ladder? You can get educated, you can earn more, you can get a good job. Education plays an important role for the upliftment. Now in the rural areas, education is not much provided, opportunities are not much there. as a result of which to move up the ladder it is quite difficult. Hence, lack of mobility is a challenge in rural areas. Educational challenges are there, we have already talked about. You should write in your answers at times when you're talking about educational challenges, you could give examples of very small things which also become a challenge. Small thing as in it may look like a small thing, but it's a big thing. For example, the school is there, but there is no availability of, let's say, washrooms, as a result of which the females are not wanting to go to the schools. The distance of the school, so on and so forth, will matter here. Shortage of raw materials. Now, this is of course a problem, but this can be a double whammy problem for women. Low ability to bear risk. The women generally would have low ability to bear risk. That is not an account of them being women, that they inherently don't have the capacity. It is to say that because they have been given a lot of the other responsibility, the responsibility of bringing up the child is sort of entirely of the women. It is not, it should be shared, but the society has put that on the women, as a result of which what happens, they have low ability to bear the risk. They would not be able to bear the risk because they have other things to take care of. Moving ahead, low need for achievement. So as such, there is not much emphasis also has been put on them with respect to achievement. Simply, it is in fact rather simply said that okay, if you can't do much, don't worry, we'll just get you married. Getting married is sort of considered to be the end goal by the women's family. Getting married, that's the end game, that's the end goal, as a result of which low need for achievement over there. So these are the issues that women face. Now I'll reiterate that these issues are faced by women in general. However, you can bifurcate, but all the reasons or all the issues are faced by women everywhere in India specifically. I hope that's absolutely clear. Now let's move on to the next thing, that is the role of women. So we'll see the role of women generically in the political domain as well as in the economic domain, so on and so forth. So women play a very important role in a lot of spheres. Generically, if you talk about the first things first, the family. So with respect to the family, the upkeep of the family, the taking care of the children, the upbringing of the children, majorly is being done by the women. Now when it comes to education, in education also, when you look at the education in the family itself, if the children are to learn, who sits with them generally and educate the children? Again, it is the women who do that. Now their role in education sphere has also been there, and it is with respect to their own education also, women have played an important role. Their participation is now increasing. However, if you look at the education sphere, you have the primary education, then you have the secondary, then you have the higher secondary, then you have the graduation, you have the post graduation, you have PhD, postdoctorate, etc. Now if you look at it, when you move from this side to this side, the participation of women sort of is lesser as compared to the men. So the gap between men and women keeps on increasing as you move from primary to higher secondary, graduation, so on and so forth. So here at the primary level, you might as good as see that the participation of men and women are same. It sort of reduces in secondary, and in higher secondary it goes down, and consecutively it is down. However, so this gap keeps on increasing. However, this particular thing is closing down because more and more women are getting educated. One important thing you could mention if there is a need in the answer is that because now the women's participation in education is increasing, their marriage age, average marriage age of an Indian woman is also increasing. That does not mean that child marriages are not there, of course, but the average age at which a woman is getting married now is increasing because more and more percentage of women are getting educated now. With respect to health and public health, very important because majority of your health care providers are women. So if you talk about the care economy, majorly women. Nurses, majorly women. So, and nurses form the majority of the workforce in the healthcare. More than doctors, nurses are there. If you look at a hospital, where you can get yourself admitted, I'm not talking about a primary health care center, but hospitals wherein nurses will be good in number. Now nurses majorly are females. At the same time, primary healthcare centers, there are females. The healthcare workers are female. So majority of the healthcare workforce is represented by women. That is their importance, and they play a very important role in food security. As I said, 48% of females are involved in agriculture and related practices. If you look at the role of women with respect to politics, so there is a concept of genuine democracy. Genuine democracy means what? See, if I tell you that the voter turnaround is 50%, that means if there are 1,000 people who were supposed to vote, only 500 people have voted, right? Now, the other case, I say, let's say 50% is the voter turnout. Now, if you look at it, if I tell you that there were, out of 1,000 voters, 500 were males, 500 were females, and 500 have actually voted. Now, if I tell you almost all of these 500 are males, so yes, democratic wise, there is 50% of democratic value to this, because 50% people took part in election. But an issue with this is the participants in election is majorly representing the male population and not the female. So it won't genuinely be it will still be a democratic thing, of course, but the genuineness will not be there, because one particular section of the society is sort of completely left out. With more awareness and more increase in the number of female voters as well, there has been a rise and implementation or a presence of genuine democracy in India. Then there is policy corollary. Policy corollary means policy which is giving us some let's say interpretation. What is that interpretation here? What has been seen is when females are at decision making positions, and we are talking about policy corollary. So if we talk about politics over here, it's politics over here. So if you, when you see that it is the female MP, female MLA, female Gram Sabha head, so on and so forth, you see that the expenditure in that particular region is higher with respect to the social welfare of the society. For example, expenditure on women health care, on children health care, on education, on food security, so on and so forth. So there is a positive impact that is seen. That is what policy corollary is all about. Then increase in voter turnout, of course. So that's the role, to create more awareness, increase the voter turnover, resulting into, of course, the genuine democracy. Then increase in female representatives also. If you look at in 1951, see, presently also the representation of women in parliament is not that high. 13-14% is not that higher number which is presently there. But if you compare it with 1951, in 1951 it was just about 4 to 5%, which now is close to 13%. I hope that's clear. So there is an improvement, and an act for the reservation of 1/3 of the seats for women is also going to come in. Moving ahead, role of women with respect to the economic growth. So women constitute or contribute about 18% to India's GDP. Now this could have been much more, but the problem here is a huge of their work is done without any pay. So that is also a point you could mention, but even then around 18% of GDP is provided by the females, around 48% of agriculture. It's very close to 50%. It's almost 50-50. Here the females are taking participation, especially in the agricultural workforce. Moving ahead, the other aspect is about the startup ecosystem in India. Now, startup ecosystem in India is quite good. The government has done a lot of things. Startup India scheme, Stand Up India scheme, wherein specific reservation for women is also there. Women and SC/ST reservation is provided over there. That has sort of helped, of course. And if you look at the present startup ecosystem in India, 10% of the startup founders are actually women. So that is again a great thing. Increase of 55% in CEO and top management role is also seen. This is a positive thing. However, there is a negative aspect to this. That means there have been a 55% increase. Still, it is quite low. That means it has been terribly low previously. But not a point. Of course, it is our job is to identify the issue and improve on it. And as this number suggests, we are definitely improving on it. When women's role with respect to environmental conservation and sustainable development is concerned, we have various movements also, environmental, sustainable development related movements led by women. huge participation of women, and even in fact led by women. You have the Chipko movement, Apiko movement to save the trees. You have Narmada Bachao Andolan, wherein the protest was there in order to conserve the nature of that area. Then you have the joint management forest management program, in which there is a requirement of having 33% of the female or women membership. So that is the importance or role that is being played at the environment conservation or the sustainable development level. Now, huge amount of role is definitely there, but how can we further improve that role? Let us see that. So first things first, improve the education, access to education, accessibility, affordability, etc. At the same time, skill development, all those things should be provided. Providing support services, if a female wants to start a business, do their own jobs, as in self-dependent, instead of becoming a job being a job seeker, they become job providers. So there needs to be support. Encouraging participation of women in the leadership roles should be established. The glass ceiling should be smashed. What is the concept of glass ceiling? See, it is said that the females in corporate and various domains only reach up to a certain level. Beyond this, if you see the organization, you will find it is majorly dominated by the males. Does that mean that females can't do it? They can, but then why? Because it is said that there is a bias against the females. There would be, of course, various reasons or arguments given for that, but that kind of a glass ceiling exists, which needs to be smashed. Addressing discrimination and biases that might be there because of the inherent bias, which needs to be addressed, that can be addressed by the data, etc., which you can show or represent in order to showcase that women could also do well and they are not different. It is just the biased opinion that is there. Encouraging community participation. Of course, in every domain, every field, there needs to be more and more participation of women. Now let's come on to the women organizations that are there. There are various. We'll look at up the 3 organizations that are present. The first one is the Self-Employed Women's Association. So as the name suggests, it will help the women to get empowered with respect to becoming a job provider, getting jobs, earning money, basically, not necessarily getting job. They can start their own organization as well. So it is sort of a trade union which is there. It is the organization for poor self-employed women. So we are talking about self-employed women, so that they create jobs, and once they create jobs, of course, there will be jobs for others also, specifically women as well. So women workers in the unorganized sector of the country. Now, unorganized, if that detail is not written in mains, that is fair enough. You can mention the particular organization, but for prelims, if there is a question, it becomes important. In fact, in mains also, if you write particularly unorganized sector, that will help, because in the unorganized sector, the women again face double whammy. In the organized sector, at least they might have some benefits, maternity leave, this, that, some protection, etc., which is not even there in the unorganized sector. Now, further looking at this, they are the unprotected labor force. The women in the unorganized sector, as I said, there are no rules, regulations, so they are the unprotected labor force. They do not obtain benefits like the workers of the organized sector. Leaves, paid leaves, and weekly leaves are there. Maternity Benefit Act is there. There are various processes to complain about any discrimination, harassment, etc. All those things are not present in the unorganized sector. Now, the main goal here is women workers for full employment, trying to convert them into full employment and bring them in the organized sector. The next one is Working Women's Forum, WWF. Now, this forum is committed to what? For poverty reduction and strengthening of economic and social cultural values of women. So again, related to the economic empowerment of women. Next is Annapurna Mahila Mandal. Annapurna means the Anna giver, the person who, the power who gives the food. So sort of the food provider. Mahila means women, Mandal means sort of a group or community. So Annapurna Mahila Mandal, it works for welfare of women and the girl child, specifically with respect to the provision of food. Okay, so talking about the security and rights of the women. It also promotes individual and group leadership among the women. So these are the three organizations with respect to women that are there. Moving ahead, let's now see the kind of questions that have been asked in Indian society with respect to women. So the first question, let's look at, it's in 2021. The question says, examine the role of gig economy in the process of empowerment of women in India. So what would you like over here? You should know what is gig economy. Now, gig economy is an economy which is now infiltrating more and more. It's sort of a part-time project-based work which gives you what? Which gives you work from home opportunities more, which gives you flexible timings. Now, if these two things are present, the women, as we have discussed, is not allowed to go out of the household, go out of the city, work from somewhere else, go to office, go late for office, etc., etc. So all those issues are addressed, and the women can still work. Plus the hours are also flexible. You need not start at 9 and end at 5. In between, if you want to do your work, you can do, and you can again start earlier and later, so on and so forth. So with that approach, you could address this particular question. Next is, what are the continued challenges for women in India against time and space? So here you have to talk about the challenges or the issues, but don't restrict yourself to that. Also talk about sort of solutions over there and how to achieve it. But remember one thing over here is against time and space. So when you're talking about against time and space, you can talk about what the problems have been historically and what it is present and what do you see in the future, thing like that. And when you talk about space, it is talking about geographically what are the issues, different issues in different geography, urban, rural, or different states, different regions of India, so on and so forth. In that manner, you can bifurcate and write the answer over here. I hope that's clear. So with this understanding, you should be able, and of course with the linkage of other parts of your syllabus, you should be able to answer the questions on women and women organization. Thank you.